can't do this! These papers prove it! I'll fire you all, Lay! This is an outrage! You will regret this! You can't do this! I have the papers right here!
It's done. You have to accept it.
No, you have no right!
The law is on my side.
I can't just walk away from this!
6:00
I don't know what you're
a.m.
talking
on the
about.
dot.
The
My
police are
phone
right here. You're
vibrates
involved.
This is
violently with a
ridiculous.
notification from the precinct. Sir, we have a report of an intruder at your residence. Please vacate the premises immediately. The property in question, my own land. A 50-acre sanctuary I poured my life savings into to provide a future for my brother, Silas, a combat medic who left his peace of mind on a battlefield in the Middle East. It's the only place where his night terrors don't wake the neighbors. The person behind the call, Evelyn Thorne, a local HOA dictator who's convinced herself that her deadbeat son, Julian, is entitled to my acreage to win a lopsided custody battle. She's using her 2 granddaughters as emotional leverage, demanding I sign over the deed before the sun hits the horizon. What she hasn't realized yet is that she's been pestering the High Sheriff's office for months. Her golden boy, Julian, has been running midnight blitzes on my property, tearing through pastures on dirt bikes at 3:00 a.m. right outside Silas's window, destroying years of quiet progress. They've cut my fences and sabotaged my well pumps. When I finally pulled Evelyn aside to discuss the wreckage, she didn't even blink. "Know your place, deputy," she sneered. "People like you are just temporary residents in a world built for people like us." Every trespass, every broken post, and every whispered threat has been logged. I have an airtight felony dossier ready to dismantle her family's reputation. The clock is ticking, and the hammer is about to drop. How far would you go if a neighborhood tyrant tried to steamroll a war hero's only place of peace? My name is Grant Sterling. I've worn the badge of county sheriff for over 2 decades. But this isn't about the uniform or the authority it carries. This is about blood, sacrifice, and the absolute chaos that ensues when entitled people pick a fight with the wrong man. The sanctuary under sea. My ranch spans 50 acres of rolling hills, bordered directly by Highland Crest, a luxury development where the landscaping alone costs more than most people's college tuition. I didn't buy this place for the prestige. I bought it because Silas needed a way out of the fog. He came home from his final tour with scars that weren't just physical. The VA offered him a cocktail of pills and cold, fluorescent-lit therapy rooms. It didn't touch the darkness. Then we moved here. There's something about the smell of rain on cedar and the steady rhythm of fixing things with your hands that brought him back. For the first time in years, he wasn't looking over his shoulder. He was actually sleeping. Then Evelyn Thorne arrived like a wildfire in a silk scarf. Evelyn runs the Highland Crest HOA with the ego of a small-town monarch. She's the kind of woman who has never heard the word no, and assumes her wealth makes her the ultimate arbiter of the law. Her white Mercedes is perpetually spotless, and her jewelry probably costs more than Silas's annual pension. But it was her son, Julian, who truly lit the fuse. He's 34, freshly divorced, and desperate to prove to a judge that he's a family man to secure custody of his kids. The court gave him a deadline to move out of his mother's guest house and into a stable environment. Apparently, they decided my ranch was that environment. They didn't care that it wasn't for sale. In Evelyn's mind, we were just squatters on land that belonged to her future. The paper trail begins. The trouble started on a Tuesday in March. I found deep ruts carved through my north grazing field. Someone had driven a heavy vehicle right through my perimeter, leaving the gate wide open. The tracks led straight back to the Highland Crest boundary. I figured it was a reckless kid and just repaired the wire, enjoying the honest weight of the sledgehammer. It was a hell of a lot more satisfying than the paperwork at the station. But then it happened again. This time the wire hadn't been knocked down, it had been snipped. Clean. Silas found it during his morning walk, and I saw that familiar tremor return to his hands. That's when the protective instinct kicked in. I'm a lawman. I don't move without evidence. I installed military-grade infrared trail cameras hidden in the tree line. The footage was damning. Julian Thorne riding a black ATV circling our barn at 2:00 a.m. He wasn't just passing through. He was taking photos, measuring distances, and acting like a man scouting a construction site. By the fourth night, he brought an associate. They were driving stakes into my dirt and using laser levels to map out the topography. The sheer gall of it was staggering. The 911 setup. On Wednesday morning, my radio crackled. A 911 call had been diverted to my unit. "Dispatch, I need a patrol at Meadow Lane immediately," a sharp voice demanded. "There's a vagrant occupying land that's currently under development, and he's being aggressive toward my son." I recognized that voice instantly. It was Evelyn. She was painting a picture of a dangerous squatter to the very department I lead. Deputy Miller responded to the call and found me in the workshop. "Sheriff, you won't believe the call we just got about your unauthorized occupation," Miller said, suppressed a laugh. I showed him the tablet with the infrared footage of Julian trespassing. Miller's jaw dropped. "So they're trying to swat the sheriff on his own land." "They have no idea who lives here, Miller. Let's keep it that way for now." The generous offer. That afternoon, a silver BMW slid into my gravel driveway. Evelyn Thorne stepped out, looking like she was visiting a disaster zone. "Excuse me," she called out to Silas, who was working near the porch. "Is the property manager available?" Silas just nodded toward the barn. I walked out, covered in grease and dust, looking every bit the low-rent laborer she expected. "I'm Grant Sterling. This is my home," I said. Evelyn didn't even take off her sunglasses. "Mr. Sterling, I'm Evelyn Thorne. There seems to be a misunderstanding about the future of this tract. My son needs this space for his family, and I'm prepared to offer you a way out before things get complicated." "It's not for sale, Ms. Thorne." "Everything has a price," she replied, her voice turning cold. "And some prices are paid in court, not in cash." The legal complexities she mentioned arrived 3 days later. A process server handed me a stack of documents from the county family court. It was a motion claiming that my refusal to sell was an unreasonable impediment to the welfare of minor children. She was actually trying to convince a judge that my ranch was the only suitable place for her grandkids to live, citing its therapeutic proximity to their school. She was using those kids as a battering ram. But what she didn't realize is that I've spent 20 years watching people try to manipulate the system. I know exactly where the cracks are. Escalation and sabotage. The following Saturday, I came home to find Silas standing in the middle of our east pasture, his face pale. The irrigation main had been obliterated. Someone had used a backhoe or a heavy tractor to rip the pipes out of the ground. Water was geysering into the air, flooding the grazing land and turning the area into a swamp. The trail cameras, they hadn't been broken, they'd been sprayed with black paint. This was a professional hit on our infrastructure. As I was surveying the damage, Julian Thorne pulled up in a brand new pickup. He leaned out the window with a smirk that made my blood boil. "Rough luck with the pipes, neighbor," he shouted. "My mom says she knows some contractors who could fix that, if you're willing to talk about that deed again." He was admitting to it without saying a word. He thought he was being clever. He thought he was draining my bank account until I gave up. What he didn't know was that I wasn't just recording the damage. I had already called in a forensic specialist to pull the tread patterns from the mud and the chemical signatures from the paint. As Julian drove away, 3 more trucks from his family's construction firm began circling the perimeter of my fence line, revving their engines in a slow, intimidating parade. They were laying siege to our home, waiting for us to break. But as I looked at Silas, whose hands were no longer shaking but clenched into fists, I realized they made one fatal mistake. They thought they were the ones doing the hunting. The shadow of the past. The trucks didn't just patrol, they were a declaration of war. For 2 hours, those black pickups with Thorne construction decals circled my fence line like vultures. They were showing me their reach, their equipment, and their absolute lack of fear. The message was loud and clear: submit or be crushed. But the most critical intelligence often comes from the people the bullies leave behind. Thursday evening, my phone buzzed with a 214 area code, Dallas-Fort Worth. A woman's voice, fragile and heavy with an East Texas drawl, came through the line. "Is this Grant Sterling, the owner of the cattle ranch on Ridge Road?" "It is. Who am I speaking with?" "My name is Alina Vance. I was Alina Thorne until 6 months ago. I'm Julian's ex-wife." The puzzle pieces didn't just click, they slammed into place. For the next 30 minutes, Alina dismantled the entire narrative Evelyn had built. Julian hadn't lost custody because of housing issues. He'd lost it due to a history of domestic battery, fraud, and a psychological evaluation that labeled him a high-risk manipulator. "The court order specifically bans him from unsupervised visits," Alina explained, her voice trembling. "He told his mother and the judge that he just needs a stable ranch environment to get the kids back. It's a total fabrication to get his hands on your land. The custody hearing requiring my ranch. Pure fiction. Julian's parental rights had been stripped after he was arrested for threatening Alina with a tire iron during a dispute over alimony." "Why are you telling me this, Alina?" "Because I've watched Evelyn use her connections to bulldoze innocent people for years. She has judges, clerks, and lawyers in her pocket. She doesn't want your ranch for the kids, Grant. Julian's been talking about a Highland Crest expansion for months. He wants to turn your 50 acres into a luxury glamping resort and wedding venue. He thinks he can clear $5 million a year once he kicks the hillbilly off the property." Engineering the trap. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't a family struggle. It was a predatory real estate heist using children as props. In the eyes of federal law, using the court system to commit property fraud is a one-way ticket to a RICO investigation. "Do you have proof?" I asked. "I have everything. Police reports, hospital records, and the text messages where they planned the hostile acquisition of your ranch. I'll overnight them to you." As I hung up, the picture was crystal clear. The midnight raids, the sabotage, the high-priced legal team, it was all a coordinated criminal effort. They thought I was an isolated rancher who would buckle under the weight of a lawsuit. They had no idea I spent my days coordinating with federal task forces on organized fraud. But I had one card left to play. They still didn't know I was the sheriff. Friday morning, Alina's package arrived. It was more damning than I imagined. It included a text from Julian to his business partner. "Just gotta get the vet and the cop wannabe off the dirt first. Then we break ground on the cabins." I called in a favor from Caleb Reed, the best civil engineer in the county. Caleb specialized in ranch infrastructure and had a wicked sense of humor when it came to defensive architecture. "Caleb, someone's been using heavy ATVs to trespass on my land. I want to give them an education in weight limits." Caleb arrived Saturday morning. We walked the eastern boundary where Julian usually made his midnight runs. "See that irrigation trench?" I pointed to the 8-foot-wide channel that fed our livestock tanks. "It runs parallel to the fence, right where he likes to cross." "Perfect," Caleb grinned. We spent the day building a collapsible maintenance bridge. To the naked eye, it looked like a standard timber crossing. It would easily support my 350 lb ranch quad or a man on foot. But the moment a 700 lb utility ATV plus a 250 lb driver hit the center, the tension cables would hit their calculated failure point. The final warning. Phase 2 was gathering my neighbors. I met with 4 other ranchers who had been bullied by the Thorne family. "We've been waiting for someone to stand up to them, Grant," said Old Man Miller. "What do you need?" "Just your eyes and your honesty when the time comes." Saturday afternoon, the final offer arrived. Evelyn's Mercedes crunched up the drive, followed by a black SUV carrying a man who looked like hired muscle and a sharp-featured woman in a power suit. Victoria Vance, the family's lead attorney. "Mr. Sterling," Victoria announced, opening a leather briefcase. "We are offering you $3.5 million cash, 30-day close. This is far above market value. Take it and we drop the lawsuits." $3.5 million. They were desperate. "The property isn't for sale," I said calmly. Evelyn's mask slipped. "You're being a fool, Grant. My son's children need this home. We have legal proceedings that will bankrupt you before the first frost." The muscle-bound man stepped forward, his voice a low growl. "Legal fees get expensive. So does fixing broken pipes. Smart men know when to stop resisting." Note, under Texas law, a threat made in the presence of witnesses during a civil dispute is a straight shot to a criminal intimidation charge. "Are you threatening me, sir?" I asked, making sure my hidden recorder caught every syllable. "Just explaining reality," he sneered. "People with unlimited resources always win." Evelyn leaned in, her perfume cloying in the heat. "Accept the money, or we trigger an eminent domain petition for a public utility easement. We'll tie you up in zoning reviews for a decade. You'll lose the ranch, and you won't get a dime." As they drove away, leaving a cloud of dust and arrogance, I looked at the clock. 11:47 p.m. was only a few hours away. I headed to the barn loft with my night vision gear. Sila's was inside with a radio, ready to call in the perimeter units I had stationed a mile out. The trap was set, the bridge was waiting, and Julian was right on schedule.